right. I think we're ready to go. Well, hi and welcome everyone to this BSB Bookathon event. I'm Tagan Shepard. I'll be moderating our reading session today, Bring the Heat, Steamy Reads. Just a few reminders before we begin. Make sure to set your screen to gallery view so you can see all of us. The chat roll is live for your comments, but if you have questions, please pop them into the Q&A box. We hope to have a little time at the end of our readings to take questions from our audience. All right, well, we've got a great group of authors here today, so let's get started. First up, we have Anna Hartnett. Anna is an award-winning author of lesbian romance. She worked in the Pacific Northwest wine industry for 7 years and now lives in her hometown of Atlanta, Georgia. She loves all things fermented or distilled, walking the local trails, and eating pastries. So many pastries.
All the pastries.
All right, it's all yours.
All right, I'll be reading from Crush, which is my summer release, and it is about a winemaker and her very inexperienced intern, who she happens to fall for, of course. And I will not be reading a sex scene, but I will be reading a pre-sex sex scene, I guess. So they are alone at night at the winery doing some punch down, so they're taking care of the fermentations, and they're just finishing up and about to have a glass of wine. So I'll take it away here. They covered all the ferments and cleaned their punch down tools. Josie tucked the bottle of wine under her arm and hung the 2 glasses between her fingers, switching off the lights with her other hand. I know it's cold, but let's enjoy this outside. Josie led the way to the crush pad and jumped onto the stainless table they used for weighing out chemicals and stashing coats during processing. The view was still fantastic, but the table stood against a wall, blocking some of the cold breeze. She cut the foil and pulled the cork, pouring a splash in both glasses. Max stood in front of her, a hand on her knee, and took a glass. She gave it a single swirl and smelled, a lock of hair spilling in front of her face. She tucked it behind her ear before her lips plucked apart and her eyes closed in concentration. Mac was undeniably beautiful, undeniably sexy. Her eyes fluttered open, and she held Josie's gaze as she took a sip. "And how is the old Pinot?" Josie asked. Mac took a moment with the wine in her mouth and swallowed. "It's quite tasty. You want to try?" Josie reached for her glass, but Mac blocked her hand. "Not like that." She pushed Josie's knees apart and stepped between her thighs, snaking a hand behind her neck and pulling Josie's mouth to hers. Taking initiative, her favorite thing about Mac. Her lips tasted like vintage Pinot Noir and white flowers, and the small space between them was as warm as a roaring fermentation. Mac's fingers firmed around the back of her neck as she pulled Josie deeper into the red wine kiss. "You know," Mac mumbled against her mouth. She thumbed Josie's bottom lip, tugging it away from its partner. "If you open your mouth a little, you'll be able to decipher more tastes and aromas," Mac whispered before pulling it into her mouth and dragging her tongue over Josie's lip. She whimpered. "Mac." She was so shocked to hear her own voice sound desperate, but that was exactly how she felt. Desperate, aching. She was thrumming with the desire to touch Mac's skin, to taste more than her mouth. "Fuck." She groaned and pushed Mac away, creating just enough space to slide off the table and turn them so Mac's ass pressed against the rounded edge. Josie grabbed her hips and lifted her the inch or so needed for her to sit, then spread her knees and stood flush against her. Mac dropped her head back and groaned as Josie kissed her neck, nipping a trail from the sensitive skin behind her ear to the collar of her sweater. All she felt was warmth, literal heat from both their heart rates ratcheting up, from the chemical reactions cascading in their bodies as they pushed and pulled at each other. She could feel the heat between Mac's legs, humid against her hip bone. She slid her to the edge of the table, closing the space between them and pressing firmly against her. Mac gasped. "Touch me." She brought Josie's hands to the hem of her sweater and tucked them under, everywhere. Her stomach was flower petal soft, just as Josie had imagined. She stroked Mac's ribcage, eager for more. When it came to Mac, she always wanted more. Their tongues brushed over each other as she fingered the base of Mac's bra. She broke their connection a little breathless. "What? No," Mac whined. "Don't stop." Josie took another step away, the cold air rushing between them. It prickled her skin. "Let's just take a breather here." "Are you joking right now?" Mac laughed a sardonic chuckle. "Josie, I am on a table with my legs spread for you, and I am so fucking wet." Josie stood frozen. Every atom of her screamed to take Mac in her arms and touch her and make love to her, but there was something stopping her. "If we do this, we've already done it. Can't you see that the line never existed? Flirting and having feelings for someone is just as high of stakes as kissing them, and kissing them is just as high of stakes as sleeping together. Now come here." Josie stepped into her space again and relished the instant warmth. She nuzzled into Mac's neck. If this blows up in our faces, it blows up in our faces, but we've already dropped the bomb, Mac said, guiding Josie's hand to the tight fabric of her waistband. What we do tonight, she tucked Josie's hand down the front of her pants. Doesn't change that. Josie groaned, relishing the feel of Mac's damp underwear against her palm. She pushed against her, not able to do much else, constricted in the tight fabric. As if reading her mind, Mac pushed them over her hips, peeling the black material down her thighs and exposing creamy pale skin. Mac. The name caught in her throat, restrained by all the emotions connected to the one syllable. Everything Josie felt for her bubbled in her chest, jumbling her thoughts and allowing only her name to escape. There was never a time when she'd looked at Mac and hadn't wanted her, desperately even. She ran her hands up Mac's smooth thighs and brushed her mouth against the hollow of her throat, enjoying the racing pulse against her lips. I want you. Mac cupped her face. I told you that everyone bails on me when things get heavy, but I know now that I was always complicit in that. Just let it happen. Let my ex walk all over me as she broke my heart. I let things occur in my life. But wine and you? She trailed a finger down Josie's shirt and hooked it through the belt loop, giving it a tug. I'm not letting go. In fact, I will fight extremely hard for both of you. She shimmied her yoga pants back over her hips, and Josie instantly missed her skin, missed her heat. It's cold, she said. Take me home. Where they have sex.
Awesome. Thank you, Anne.
Yeah, just setting the mood for everyone there.
Right? We saw that coming, I think. Awesome. Thanks so much. All right. Well, our next reader is Piper Jordan. Piper Jordan, she, her, grew up in the Midwest, but soon transplanted to the lands of lizards and saguaro cactus. She shares her home with a gang of fur babies and enjoys sunset hikes, traveling, and spending time with family and friends. Piper wasn't able to be here in person, so she provided a pre-recorded reading for us today. Here it is.
Hi, I'm Piper Jordan. Today I'll be reading from my book Decadence, which I had the pleasure of writing with Renee Roman and Ronica Black. And the book is, it's cut up in 3 parts. So Renee's got her own part, Ronnie has her own part, and I have my own. And it's set in Las Vegas. It's about the Decadence Masquerade Ball, which is an annual ball. It's invitation only, and it's women only. So my character, Addison, she's been trying to score a ticket to the ball for a while. She finally does. And this is the night that she's going to kind of enjoy herself, but also she's a journalist on the side. She's trying to score an exclusive interview with the host. So she befriends this woman named Lauren, and the two of them kind of set off to try to find Elizabeth, the main woman and the host of the ball. And since everybody's got their masks on, it's kind of difficult since she doesn't know what she looks like. So what I'm about to read takes place when Lauren and Addison find their way upstairs into the master suite. I rested my fingers on hers for a moment before she squeezed and took control. She led me into a bathroom about half the size of the master suite. I'm sure it had all the necessary amenities most bathrooms had, but I didn't notice because I was focused on the small swimming pool encased in marble that sat in the corner of the room. Don't tell me that's a bathtub, I snorted because I had never seen a tub big enough to easily fit a dozen people in it with plenty of elbow room. Lauren moved around me. Oh, it's more than a bathtub, she said as she hit one of 2 buttons by the 3 steps leading up to the tub. The water immediately churned as bubbles formed on the surface. Tell me something, Addison. Have you ever made love in a jacuzzi? My stomach did a flip-flop as the question hit me between my legs. She circled me and leaned in and whispered in my ear. You'd be amazed how a jet placed in the right spot between your legs feels like a dozen tongues licking you at the same time. She kissed the words down my neck. I leaned my head back to give her more skin as I imagined that sensation. Tonight is about letting go, about not having a predetermined agenda, she said in her low, sultry voice as she reached from behind me and began unbuttoning my shirt. It's about finding that place inside you that can take you to levels you've never reached, she said as she finished her task. And a slight chill tickled its way up my exposed skin. I stood paralyzed, wanting and waiting for her next move. Lick my fingers, she said as she brought her right hand to my lips. I bent forward and sucked them into my mouth. She moaned. We stayed like that for a moment until she gently pulled her fingers away from my tongue and slid them under my dangling shirt. The wetness found my nipple, and she pinched and played in that space until I told her with my accelerated breath that I was desiring more. Not yet, she whispered as she read my mind. She seemed confident in what she was doing, and I intuitively knew if I gave myself to her, I'd be in experienced hands. Another pinch to my nipple caused me to catch my breath. The pressure was just on the verge of pain, yet somehow extremely pleasing. The wetness between my legs released, as though that nipple was a switch to a faucet that was now on steady flow. Earlier, you asked me what the meaning of this ball was all about. Lauren began unbuckling my belt with her right hand. The answer to that question lies within you. Tell me, Addison, what does it mean to you to have the ability and freedom to completely express yourself? She began rubbing the fingers of the other hand through my hair, and I fell deeper into her trance. To unlock all of the fantasies that you hold up here, she asked as she pushed her fingers deeper into my scalp and let them play out down here. She slid her other hand down my pants and cupped me between my legs. I stood speechless, unable to answer as I leaned back into her. She had me, and she knew it. I'm going to get undressed now, and I want you to do the same. She moved away from me, and we both began disrobing, neither taking our eyes off the other. Her body was a little curvy, her breasts were average, and her nipples perky and pink. She was beautiful, and I couldn't wait to give myself over to her. I stepped out of my clothes and stood at the edge of the tub. Patience, she said, and I wondered again if she had an uncanny way of reading my mind. I let out a shaky breath as we both stood in our nakedness, our masks the only things still covering a part of our flesh. I reached up to remove mine, and she stopped me. Leave it on. That's the rules of the masquerade. Your identity is not relevant here. Tonight is not about who you are or what your title is. It's about how you feel. Anonymity can be a powerful thing, my dear. Lack of identity brings lack of inhibitions, she said as she extended her hand and led me up the marble steps and down the descending 3. We stood for a moment in the warm water before she released my hand and shuffled to the far side of the jacuzzi. She sat down, chest in deep water, rested her arms on the ledge, leaned her head back, and closed her eyes. The bubbles swirled around the tips of her breasts, lapping around them in a way that I wish my tongue was doing. Tonight, she said, wealth, power, title, or degree don't matter. We're all here equally, playing in the shadows, behind a cloak of freedom from the face we must present to the rest of the world. Tonight is about the inner Addison that has yet to show herself, because up until now, she hasn't allowed that side of her to come out and play. I stared at this woman who seemed to read me as easy as an open book. Had I ever truly opened up and allowed myself to express my inner urges that I fantasize about? To know what it would be like to have those thoughts played out in real time. Lauren was right. Tonight was not about formalities or identities. Tonight was about one thing. The question was, could I get out of my head long enough to just be? So anyway, that was a part of Decadence, and thank you so much for letting me read it. And I'll see you guys later. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Awesome. Thanks so much. All right, let's move on to our next reader, who I think is probably reading from the same book, actually. Next, we have Renee Roman. Renee Roman, she, her, lives in upstate New York with her fur baby, Maisie. She is blessed by close friends, a loving partner, and a supportive family. She's passionate about many things, including living an adventurous life, exploring her authentic self, and writing lesbian romance and erotica. Her book, Escorted, won the 2023 Golden Crown Literary Society Erotic Novel Award. You can find Renee on social media, her website, as well as online and in-person events. She enjoys interacting with readers via email at reneeromanwrites.com. All right, take it away, Renee.
And as Tagan said, I will be reading from Decadence. My story is second in the book. Max Woodbury is a successful Alfa Romeo car dealer in Las Vegas. Her only regret is how her relationship with Dee Towson ended, and she's determined to get her back. Max enlisted the help of her friend, Elizabeth Hathaway, socialite and host of the exclusive judgment and guilt-free masquerade party called Decadence. This reading is from Chapter 3. She's in the third cabana, but I'm not sure how long she'll stay put, Elizabeth said. Do you think she'll recognize me? Max's painted-on tuxedo and matching painted mask had been done in such a way as to disguise her true features. The results were startling enough that she didn't recognize herself, but Dee intimately knew her and every detail of her body. At least she hoped so, except for tonight. Tonight she wanted to be whoever Dee needed or wanted. The last thing Max wanted was to worry about revealing herself before the time was right. Okay, I'm going. She reached for Elizabeth's hand. Thank you for everything. Don't thank me yet. You're the one who has to do the work. Elizabeth gave her a squeeze. Dee would be a fool to not want to reconcile. If you need anything, you know how to find me. Max nodded and turned toward her destiny. She pulled back the curtain and smiled, though her heart ached. Dee reclined on the lounge with her eyes closed. She wore a beautiful red dress and a matching, fully adorned and feathered mask, but she'd know her anywhere. The small lamp in the corner cast enough light that if she announced herself, Dee would be able to see her. Well, hopefully she'd see someone without recognizing it was her. Fingers crossed. Good evening, she said, keeping her voice deeper than usual. Dee's eyes opened behind the mask. The host asked me to take care of you. She moved closer. May I? Please say yes. She waited, fighting the urge to beg out loud. Who are you? She'd thought long and hard about what she'd answer if Dee asked. Redemption. Dee stared at her, her chest moving up and down rapidly. Yes, you can. Dee whispered so low she could just make out the words above the background noise. I need it. Max bent over, gathered the fabric of her dress, leaving it pooled at her hips, and revealed a minuscule black thong. Had Dee ever worn such tantalizing garments when they were together? Max was certain she'd remember if Dee had, and it was all she could do not to moan. Max thought Dee was one of the sexiest women she'd ever met, though according to their friends, Dee never believed it. She lay on the chase lounge on her stomach, her face inches from Dee's crotch. Their eyes met as she pulled the thong to the side. Max only waited a beat, afraid if she hesitated, Dee would change her mind, and used her tongue to stroke the silky layers she loved. The taste was one she'd longed for over the past few months. God, had it been that long since they'd shared a bed? Had they ever had sex with total abandon? Was this a side of Dee she had yet to witness? And if so, why had she held back from sharing her desires? Like everything Dee did, Max sensed she never truly let go, so she could fully enjoy the moment. Dee moaned, and she focused her attention on Dee's swollen clit and slick hole. With each stroke of her tongue, press of her lips, Dee's hips rose to meet Max's hungry mouth. She thought about Dee, the woman she loved, giving herself to a stranger, and what it might mean. Anonymous sex could be cathartic, and she hoped tonight's encounter would be that for Dee. She didn't want to consider Dee was with her because she was trying to purge Max from her memory. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Don't stop. Dee's eyes were hazy slits visible in the cutouts and filled with the kind of lust Max had often wished she could have seen when they were together. She wanted that kind of total surrender from Dee now, wanted her to fully let go for once. Damn her crushed heart. If she had any hope of Dee giving her another chance, she'd better lick her pussy until Dee couldn't think of anything else, until she cried out and collapsed in ecstasy. Max stared into the blue depths of her eyes. I won't, she said. She didn't have to try to disguise her voice. It was choked with emotion. She focused on the rock-hard clit, alternately sucking and licking. Without even thinking, she slid 2 fingers into Dee's wet entrance and shuddered when Dee reacted with a long, deep moan. The desire to please her, to show Dee how much she wanted her, was almost as important as showing her how much she loved her. It was what she wanted to do, but more than that, it was what she needed to do for both their sakes. Dee's pussy was slick and greedy. She had gone so long without Max's attention, and it had been so damn hard thinking about someone taking her place. She grasped at any justification for physical pleasure by telling herself it was time. She couldn't fight the anguish any longer. She needed to sink into oblivion, and she had a feeling redemption could get her there. This was how she'd always centered herself, finding steady ground to stand on when Max made her come. Max's love for her wasn't in question. It never had been. If Max were here, that thought flew out of her mind when redemption slipped her fingers inside. How did she know what Dee craved? Max always knew. Whose body was she mastering now? Was it that movie star she'd caught Max with, laughing and smiling like they'd known each other for a long time? Maybe they had. Maybe, just maybe, the blonde wasn't the only one. Redemption picked that exact moment to dance her fingertips against the spot that made her squirm, and she sucked in a quick breath. She'd been in a black hole of regret and longing, but it was time she moved on, like Max had. But the lie pressed against her heart. As much as Max had insistently tried to get in touch with her, it must have meant that she still cared, didn't it? Could it mean that she missed Dee as much as Dee missed her? But she didn't want her excuses for whatever had happened with the woman she'd seen her with. She couldn't handle that. Her center grew heavy. Redemption had talent. The only one who'd been able to make her ache to come was. Dee glanced down and met expressive blue eyes. There was something familiar with them, though the daze of her impending orgasm was making it difficult to think. The more she looked, the more guilt overtook her. Her chest tightened. The only woman she wanted to come for was Max. She reached to touch redemption, to get out of there now because redemption wasn't who Dee wanted licking her, fucking her. She wasn't Max, and Max wasn't with her in the cabana. She didn't have a chance to tell her to stop because redemption pressed another finger to her ass and easily entered. Her orgasm closed on her like runaway locomotive. Redemption kept slowly fucking her holes and using her talented mouth while wave after wave coursed through her, leaving her powerless to do anything but sink into the sensation. The screams she spewed were deep, soul-drenched sounds coming from the part of her brain that was barely functioning. Who was this dark phantom taking her as though she knew Dee's soul? She had to end the encounter she was already regretting and gently pushed her away. No more. The ensuing empty feeling when redemption slowly withdrew matched that of her soul, of her heart.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to our next reader. That would be Aurora Rey. Aurora Rey, she, her, is a college dean by day and a life coach and queer romance author the rest of the time. Except when she's cooking or baking or riding the tractor or pining for goats. While she hopes you think her tractor is sexy, baking is her favorite form of seduction. Take it away, Aurora.
Thanks so much. I am going to be reading tonight from Sweat Equity, which came out in October. It's the first in the renovation romance series, which features 3 siblings who work for a family construction company. This first book features Maddie, who is the eldest sibling, and Cy, who has moved to their small town in Vermont to take a job as a cheesemaker and has bought kind of a money pit of a house. And they spend the first good third of the book dancing around one another, and they have finally accepted the fact that they are going to tumble into bed together. Cy lifted her head. Before things get too hot and heavy, we should, do the safe sex talk. Maddie laughed. Yes, we should. I always wish I'd had it early already when the moment arrives, but then I imagine having it over dinner, and that's even weirder. Maddie imagined the waiter arriving at the table with their entrees just as she asked Cy about dental dams. I think we made poor Jerry suffer enough. Fair. So, okay. Obviously, I spent the last year in France. I slept with 2 women while I was there and got tested right before I left. Maddie nodded at the frank disclosure. All right, I dated a woman last year. I thought we were exclusive. She didn't. I got tested after that. Cy cringed. Sorry about that. She rolled her eyes. She bruised my ego more than my heart. Anyway, Cy continued to smile. Where were we? Here, I think. She kissed Cy tentatively, not trusting that she hadn't TMI'd them right out of the moment. Oh, yes, that's right. Cy kissed her back, and there was nothing tentative about it. And here. She slipped her hands under the hem of Cy's sweater and scratched lightly across her lower back. That's very nice. Here, let me show you. Cy mimicked the move, but instead of scratching Maddie's back, she grazed her fingers up Maddie's sides and along her ribs to the undersides of her breasts. I like where you're going with that. The rather inane conversation seemed only to highlight the heat growing between them. Let me give you some better access. She lifted her arms and Cy didn't hesitate to tug her sweater up and over her head. Rather than dropping it to the floor, Cy scanned the room and tossed it onto a chair in the corner. A small gesture, but one Maddie noticed. Maddie pointed at Cy's torso and made an up and down motion with her finger. You too. She thought Cy might take off her own sweater, but she lifted her arms, just as Maddie had. Not that she felt like they were on anything but even footing, but the move seemed to draw attention to it, make it fun rather than earnest. Cy might have her fair share of butch swagger, but she didn't seem set on wielding it indiscriminately. Yet another surprise that technically didn't surprise her all that much. With Cy's sweater joining hers on the chair, Maddie took a moment to appreciate Cy's broad shoulders and muscular arms. Her breasts were small and made even less pronounced by the tank top she wore instead of a bra, and she was a little thick in the middle. What? Cy's question made her realize she'd been staring. Sorry, I confess I was objectifying you. Not to be superficial, but you're so my type. Cy smiled. Nothing wrong with that. And if it makes you feel better, I was objectifying you too. Much better. Maddie tugged at the hem of the tank top, freeing it from Cy's pants. Is this okay? Cy nodded. Maddie helped her out of the shirt, then nodded when Cy's fingers hovered over the clasp of her bra. The desire to be completely naked warred with the desire to tumble into bed as quickly as possible. In the end, both lost out to the kind of skin-on-skin kissing that threatened to ignite her from the inside. When Cy's mouth covered one of Maddie's nipples, her whole body arched. She gripped Cy's shoulders, wanting more, but desperately wanting her not to stop. They tumbled to the bed, Cy sort of on top with a thigh pressed between Maddie's. Maddie's hips took the invitation, rising to meet Cy. Again, wanting more. More. It became sort of a chorus in her mind, spurring her on. She fumbled with the button of Cy's jeans, finally popping it loose and sliding her hand inside. When her fingers found Cy's clit, hard and hot and slick with her wetness, Maddie groaned. To be fair, Cy groaned too. Why are you wearing pants? Maddie asked with a laugh. Why are you? Beats me, though technically I'm wearing leggings. I'm still on the fence about whether they count as pants. Too much fabric. Cy came onto her knees, shimmied both Maddie's skirt and leggings down. As soon as they were gone, Maddie sat up and went for Cy's jeans. Those two. Cy shed them and returned, blanketing Maddie's body with her own. Fuck, you feel good. Maddie grinned. I was just thinking the same thing. I was also thinking I'd like to get back to what I was doing before that fiasco to get naked. Cy shifted onto her side, caressing Maddie's breast as she went. I wouldn't call it a fiasco. Maddie rolled as well, slipping her hand back between Cy's legs. Brouhaha? Cy's head dropped back. I don't care what you call it, as long as you keep touching me like that.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. And now for our final reader. That would be Casey Richardson. Casey Richardson, her, lives in Southern California with her wife and rescue cat and dog. She spends her days torturing people as a physical therapist assistant. Don't judge her, they pay her to do it. And her nights brainstorming with her wife about characters and their stories. Every Beat of Her Heart is Casey's 6th novel with Bold Strokes Books, and she feels so lucky to be part of the best publisher in the world. She's on Facebook, Twitter, she refuses to call it X, same, Threads, Blue Sky, Instagram, basically all the socials. All right, Casey, take it away.
Thank you, Tagan. I'm going to be reading from my December release, Every Beat of Her Heart. The scene I'm going to read is Piper and Jillian's first kiss. It starts when Jillian is at Piper's art store for a pottery lesson. They're growing closer despite being wary of falling in love. Jillian made her way through the doors with Piper right behind her. She hung up her purse and coat and turned around. May I help you? I believe you can if you give me a hug. Piper stepped closer and it sent a thrill through Jillian when Piper removed Jillian's hair from inside the collar of her shirt. Is that all? Jillian's words came out husky and her pulse thrummed through her veins. For now. Piper opened her arms and Jillian gladly stepped into them. Piper smelled like a hint of lavender, and they loosened their hold on each other but didn't quite let go. How have you been? We haven't talked in a few days. I know, I'm sorry about that. I've been in a creative mood, and when I wasn't working, I was throwing clay. Really? Can I see? Sure, I'll show you after class. In the meantime, grab your smock. The other lady should be here any moment. After the class, Jillian was anxious to see Piper's new work. Okay, let's see what you've done. Jillian had admired Piper's pottery, and now that they were growing closer, Jillian was excited to see what she'd made. Don't expect too much. They're still drying, so they're still a couple of weeks away from being complete. Piper pulled the pieces from the bin and placed them on a table for Jillian to see. She took her time studying each piece, admiring the etches and designs Piper had artistically implemented into her creations. Piper, they're beautiful. In my mind, I know the colors that would brilliantly accentuate them. Well, are you going to tell me? No, you're going to finish them, and when they're done, I'll let you know if you got it right. Piper laughed. Oh, the pressure you put on me. On another note, would you like to have dinner with me tonight? Italian? Jillian would have said yes, no matter what Piper wanted to eat. It's like you're reading my mind. How about I pick you up at 7? How about we hit up that place a couple of blocks over? That way we can walk off our dinner. I'll pick you up at your place. I like a woman who knows what she wants, Piper smiled, took her hand and interlocked their fingers. They stood there, both watching their hands, then looked up and smiled at each other. I'm going to go talk to Kelly about the show. I'll see you later. After dinner, they went back to Jillian's house. Do you want to come in for a little bit? Jillian posed the question to Piper when they'd reached Jillian's home. That would give her an opportunity to know her better by talking some more and also seeing the more personal side to her. Piper believed you could tell a lot about someone by the way their home was decorated. If you're sure, I'd love to. Once inside, Piper took in the living room that was warm and inviting. There was a comfortable-looking brown couch facing the fireplace with 2 matching chairs on either side. Piper walked to the mantel and looked at the wedding picture of Jillian and Kate. She felt Jillian come up beside her. That was on our wedding day. Piper didn't have to look at Jillian to know she was wistful. Her voice spoke volumes. You both looked amazing. When was that? Piper finally spared a glance. Jillian smiled, but there was a hint of sadness to it. About 15 years ago, we were about 33, 34 years old. Piper returned her gaze to the photo. So you were together about 15 years before you got married? Jillian laughed. Yes. God, I feel so old now. It feels like we were just babies when we met. How amazing that you two had all that time together. If Piper was being honest, she was a little jealous that Jillian had so much time with Kate. She'd wish she'd known a love like Jillian and Kate had. Yes, it was amazing. I cherished the time we had together, and it was wonderful being married to my best friend. But she's gone now and not coming back. I know she'd never want to leave, but I also know that she'd never want me to spend the rest of my life alone. Piper nodded and looked to the right. Hey, that's my vase. It was so exciting for Piper to see her work somewhere other than the shop or her parents' home. Jillian laughed. No, that's my vase. I paid for it and everything. Piper hugged Jillian. Thank you. I've never seen my work out in the wild before. More of your pottery should be out in the wild, as you call it. I meant it when I said your pieces are beautiful and you should be charging much more than you are in the shop. Have you thought about showing? Maybe I can talk my friend into featuring you and Kelly together. Oh, no. No. Kelly deserves to have her own show. I'm just messing around with my work. Still embraced, Jillian touched the tip of Piper's nose with her index finger. Even if you are just messing around with your work, it's still gorgeous and deserves to be seen by a bigger audience. Do you know what I think is gorgeous? You. Piper's entire body was on fire, and she didn't need an extinguisher. She just wanted to combust right there from the heat shared between them. The air between them grew thick, their eyes locked until Piper's gaze dropped to Jillian's lips. Piper had dreamt of this moment, it seemed, for her whole life. She moved closer, closer, feeling her heart almost stop until she kissed Jillian. Their lips melded together, Jillian soft and inviting for Piper's. Piper's heart felt like it exploded. As the kiss deepened, Piper thought she'd lose her breath, but she wasn't about to stop the best kiss she'd ever had. Piper caressed Jillian's lips with the tip of her tongue until they opened, and she welcomed Piper's tongue into her mouth. Piper moaned and pulled Jillian closer until there wasn't an inch of space between them. Piper felt Jillian's hand cup the back of her head and pulled her even more into her. Piper's hands started wandering on their own, it seemed. She no longer had any control of what her body did. Jillian was in control, and Piper was more than happy to be on the ride with her. She moved her hand up Jillian's back over her softer than ever could be imagined sweater, then moved it back down over Jillian's behind. Piper gently squeezed and Jillian pulled away, breathing hard. Jillian's skin was flushed, her lips swollen, and she looked so sexy. God, I'm sorry, Piper. Sorry for what? The kiss? Please don't say the kiss.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Casey.
Thank you.
All right. Well, let's have all of our participants come back on camera, and we're going to have a couple of questions. We got about 10 minutes or so we can get a couple of questions in there. Okay, so my first one is going to be for you, Anna. So
All right.
get ready. So Steamy doesn't have to be sex. What's your favorite place to add a little heat other than a sex scene?
I mean, everyone loves a first kiss, right? Like first kiss, but also just like the first like touch, if that makes sense. Brushing of hands or like holding hands. It's just like everything is just kind of starting to cascade at that point. And like it's the precipitation of basically like the first, depending on how you write, third or half of the book or 3/4 of the book if we're doing a slow burn. So I think that's like a big moment that you can make pretty steamy, even though it's not, technically a sex scene.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's that start of the intimacy. That's a good place.
Sure.
Awesome. All right, Aurora, you're up next. So sex scenes are notoriously hard to write, and many authors fear them, but y'all have just provided some great heat here. How do you overcome the nerves and get those scenes written?
I actually don't dread them or sort of find that they make me nervous. I think they can be a lot of fun. I think if you are doing it right, they should turn you on, which is kind of fun. I think the biggest challenge is, writing authentically to the characters, not necessarily just sort of your own personal preferences and desires and attractions. And so kind of just getting outside of your own head. I think for me, and entertaining things that I wouldn't necessarily have front of mind is one of the things that I have to really put some effort into.
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Awesome. And yeah, you should have fun writing them, right? We just, it's so nerve-wracking. All right, Renee, you're up, and you get an audience question. All right.
Okay.
So where is your favorite physical location to write sex scenes and why?
It's in my study. That's where I am now. It's a space that I am fairly protective over, which is one of the reasons why when we had a work at home back when COVID started, I threatened to quit my job if they didn't bring me back to the office because suddenly work was invading my writing and creative space. And I did not like that. So it's here. And unfortunately, Maisie makes her appearance. She's my cat. Often when I'm writing because she doesn't want me here. She wants me holding her or playing with her or doing something else. But we come to terms with the spray bottle.
I should use that. Yeah, my cat loves to scream at me the minute I start, like intensely into a scene, he just comes in and screams. So
Yeah.
they do that. All right, Casey. How about this one? So I have a lot of weird quirks when it comes to words to use in sex scenes. What's the one word you absolutely hate to read in a steamy scene, and why?
Oh, I think any term used other than the anatomically correct term, like you know, I've seen some the bundle of nerves for the clit. A friend of mine actually called me out on that one time. She's like, don't use that term. It sounds like a bunch of wires for a computer program or whatever. And so I've gotten better at using the anatomical correct terms. So yeah, that's that's probably it for me.
I agree. I agree with Ann Hart in the comments there. That sounds like a medical person thing to say.
Yeah.
No euphemisms here. Huh?
I mean, some words I get embarrassed to use them, and so this book was actually a lot cleaner than my others, and it was more, wasn't a whole lot of sex to it, but a lot of romance. But yeah, there's just some words that I'm embarrassed to use, so I try to stay away from those.
One of these days, we're going to tease out what those words are.
Oh yeah, after a couple of old fashions.
There you go.
Oh yeah.
All right, I like this question. So now I'm going to ask Anna the same question. What words do you hate and why?
I don't know if I hate them. I think was the original questions the ones I don't want to read out loud. Okay, because it's very different, like, you know, writing a sex scene in like your dark room where no one is. But then you ask me to say pussy and it's really uncomfortable on a panel or whatever, clit, hole. I guess pussy is the hardest one to say. I'll just say it 3 times, pussy.
There you go. Now it's fine, right?
There we go. I broke it for everyone. I'm pretty sure Renee already.
If you
set
say
them
it
all
3
for
times
us.
in a row, we'll take you to a magical place.
Yeah, okay, so now there's the question, Renee. Are there any words that you won't use in a sex scene?
It really depends on the genre that I'm writing in. If I'm writing a romance, I probably won't use words like slut or every once in a while I'll throw out the cunt word, but that has to be in the right place in the right time. And those are usually the erotic novels when there is no holes barred. Everything goes. And those are the times when I feel free to, if they're in the right spot. I mean, they just can't be thrown in for shock value. I've written words into my manuscripts and removed them because they just did not fit. But a romance to me is a softer, sensual kind of atmosphere, and the wording should match that.
Absolutely, yeah. And it does have to do with character too, I imagine. You know, it's like how would the character use the words? So
Absolutely.
all right, Aurora, now it's your turn. What's the word?
If I had to pick one, I am a baker at heart, and so there are a lot of things in my life I want to come out moist. A sex scene is not one of them, so that's the one I'll pick. Although I did grow up reading straight romance, like from high school, and oh man, there are some euphemisms that are so bad.
Oh, bad. Yeah,
Oh,
exactly. I didn't come to straight romance until later in life, and then yeah, it's the euphemisms that did it in. Not not the fact that it was straight. It's the euphemisms. All right, well, let's see. We don't have any more questions from the audience. Any last thoughts from any of our panelists? Anything you want to throw out there before we head out for the night?
Tagan. What
Uh,
are your words?
oh, I knew that was
you're
gonna
just
come
like
back.
gonna get off so easily.
Okay, so it's just me, but actually it's the P word that you use a lot. I don't know why. I just can't. I don't know why.
Oh man, you'll leave us
Yeah,
all.
but but I'm all soft and I'm a soft butch, that's all. It feels like a hard word for me.
Oh.
Should we have the panties debate while we're here?
Oh,
Oh.
right.
The
Yeah,
other
that's a
P
good
word
point.
that people
Yeah.
have really big opinions about.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't like that one either.
I think
Awesome.
I'll put a point to panties. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyone want to put a point with me?
I mean, I'm pro
Yeah.
panties.
I will.
Okay, all right, good.
No panties. Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Renee, it's last vote. Are you pro panties or anti panty?
Well, most of the time they're off anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
That's the most Renee answer.
Exactly. I feel like that's the perfect way to end the Steamy reading session. Well, thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. Appreciate it. And we'll see you at some future Bookathon events.
Thanks, everybody,
Right.
for joining
Thank you,
us.
everyone.